comes from a question or a suggestion that one of my followers posted on Instagram. And they wanted to know a little bit about Ayurveda. Ayurveda is actually one of the topics in the book that I've written. And because Ayurveda is so vast, the topic of my book is solely on Ayurvedic thought and remedies for digestive disorders in particular, or how in Ayurvedic thought, the gut is everything. So first of all, I just want to explain what Ayurveda is. The word Ayurveda means the study of life or life science. I kind of think of it as the equivalent from the Indian subcontinent as traditional Chinese medicine. So many people think of acupuncture as being the medicine of China. And acupuncture is just one part of traditional Chinese medicine, which they call TCM for short. And so likewise, Ayurveda, as I mentioned before, it is extremely vast. So I have certificates in Ayurvedic studies because I studied Ayurveda both in the United States and in India. But I am not an Ayurvedic practitioner or an Ayurvedic doctor. I have been seeing every year an Ayurvedic doctor for at least 6 years. And I pretty much consider him my primary care physician. And in India, it is very common that you can choose as your primary care physician an Ayurvedic practitioner or an allopathic practitioner. Now, there are some things that you definitely would go to for an allopathic practitioner, such as if you break a leg, it needs to be reset. But just as with TCM, because I also very much believe in traditional Chinese medicine, I believe that traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda can help the healing process. So let's say I break my wrist. I'm going to go to a traditional allopathic doctor to get it reset. But I do believe that getting TCM or Ayurvedic assistance is going to help in the healing process. So Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine have many similarities, and to me they are all about getting to the root of the problem and finding balance. So as I mentioned, let's take the example of a broken wrist. Broken wrist is from an accident. Your body doesn't just break on its own, right? The bone doesn't just break on its own. So that's why, in my perspective, I would go to an allopathic practitioner to get it reset. However, there are so many things that we do to break or to offset the balance of our bodies. And number one is nutrition. Number two is our lifestyle. Number three is what happens outside of us, so the environment. If it's 100 degrees outside or if it's 10 degrees below zero, all of those offset that natural balance. So as a certified yoga therapist, my coaching of my clients is very much based on Ayurvedic principles and traditional Chinese medicine principles. And I may oftentimes refer them to an acupuncturist, for example, or to an Ayurvedic doctor. But what I do is I try to identify where those imbalances are, and I try to find the root problems to get them back to their optimum well-being. So I'm just going to give you some examples of what I have been doing I was first introduced to Ayurveda maybe 12 years ago, but I got my Ayurvedic training, my first Ayurvedic training in India 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago. And since then, I have been very aware of what I do. And then since I've been seeing my Ayurvedic doctor, I follow what is called a Dinacharya. And a Dinacharya is your Ayurvedic routine. And so again, I have complete faith in my Ayurvedic doctor, and I do everything he tells me to do, mostly, or I try to. So what is very important to understand is that what one person does for their dinacharya is not what another person does for their dinacharya, because Ayurveda, as is the same with traditional Chinese medicine, looks at the individual. We don't just give everybody a band-aid or the same pill. We go to what is the underlying imbalance and problem, and how does that need to be balanced out. So as an example, I do not eat any nightshades. And that is because my Ayurvedic doctor tells me not to. And there are different reasons why people should or should not eat nightshades. And I will tell you that being a vegetarian since the 1970s, eggplant and potatoes were some of my mainstays, and those are nightshades. And tomatoes also. So I avoid tomatoes, I avoid eggplant. And then I haven't eaten a potato for 10 to 12 years, but that is because of my blood sugar and trying to keep my blood sugar in check, which I do. But that's just an example. Another example are with herbs. So in traditional Chinese medicine, a lot of times they will give you herbs like supplements to take or herbal teas, and the same thing in Ayurveda. When I go to see my Ayurvedic doctor, he gives me different herbs to take for short term, and then there is one that I take for my life. But I also have to look at the different herbs with everything that I do with my cooking, with my teas or whatever. So as an example, since the time I can remember, since I was little itty bitty, I was always freezing. And my spot at the dinner table was next to the oven because I needed to get warm. And a lot of times on winter days, I would sit on the radiator. Back then we had radiators, which is what for heating the homes. My mother, on the other hand, was always sweating. And, she'd have pink cheeks, and she just could not stand the heat. And I was great with the heat. And that is because of the Ayurvedic type or constitution that you have. So just an example of how things are different. So I try to eat more spices, cayenne pepper, whereas somebody like my mother, she's passed, but I would recommend that she drink peppermint, which is cooling, or coconut water, which is also very cooling. So those are just a couple of examples. And again, I do Ayurvedic consults, but I am not an Ayurvedic doctor, and Ayurveda is very much a part of the yoga therapy that I do with my clients. And for more information, please visit my website, thenamastecouncil.com, and I would love to hear more questions that you have about Ayurveda.